What's up, Yokai Busters? Welcome to another episode of the Silver Screen Conference.
Too soon.
I'm your host, Theo from the Shady Tribe, I guess. Here joining with me are someone called Digimon,
Hello, Garapo.
Shiroi,
Yanya?
Jova,
Yo.
and Pedro. I don't have a ton for that, the 4 Ps, especially for Yokai.
Yeah, and I'm still here. ... Now.
He's the whisperer.
Does that mean he doesn't
Wow.
he needs to check his iPad?
Hold on, let me see my iPad so I can see what yokai this is. But anyway,
Anyway, today's specimen is the Yokai Watch movie, also known in Japanese as Yokai Watch the movie. Shut up. This was done not necessarily the zeitgeist, but definitely when the series was actually gaining a lot of ground in Japan. But it showcased because these managed to win on the box office in Japan against Star Wars Episode 7. And you can make the joke, oh, it's because the sequel series sucks anyway. You have to remember, this was when Episode 7 just came out and nobody knew what to expect aside from a couple of memes from the trailer. So it was still relatively impressive what these actually accomplished. But that's the bigger question. What is this movie actually about, especially because the anime had been going on for a very long while? Maybe Pedro can give us the answer.
well, technically when this movie came out, the anime had only been going on for about 8 months at this point.
The anime was definitely what did help give the series the shot in the arm it needed, seeing as how the original game had not exactly sold the best even in Japan.
No. The original game was much more akin to Ni no Kuni in its tone. However, the much more comedic anime version took off, and as a result, the games were adapted to match that tone, basically. All right, so the first Yokai Watch movie. The first Yokai Watch movie is an adaptation of the plot of the second game. And it's a very straightforward adaptation that basically goes through all the key points. So
I think it takes out the whole war between the two tribes.
Yeah, well, you have to cut something.
Kind of a big
only 90
thing,
minutes.
given how they literally made 2 different versions of the game based off of that. Although I think there's also technically kind of a third version.
There's a third version, yes, and that's the one that was used as the base for the Western release. Okay, so the first Yokai Watch movie starts actually with Nate sleeping in his bed, and apparently something happens that causes the Yokai Watch to disappear from his wrist. We get
Nate,
some.
I don't feel so good.
Again, I mean, we get some visuals of cogs that foreshadow the reason why it happens. So I guess we'll stick to that. Okay, cool. All right, let's continue. All right, in the next day, Nate is just going on his merry life as if nothing happened. Like there's no yokai, and he doesn't even remember anything about what happened. So what could possibly be the reason why this entire shift shows up? This actually has to do with how they reboot the franchise in the second game, so it's kind of a nod to that, for those who don't know. So Nate goes off his merry way. However, what happens is a giant cat yokai shows up in the middle of the town and starts wreaking havoc. Nate, of course, doesn't know who he is. However, apparently this giant cat yokai has been looking for Nate. So what he does is he literally zaps him out of his forgetfulness so he can remember. And this cuts into the opening Geta Geta Po theme that also... And they changed the lyrics of Geta Geta Po to be basically a little recap of what Yokai Watch is about, and basically a sum up of what's been happening in between the beginning of the anime and this movie. Because this movie is canon and takes place in between episodes 48 and 49.
The story even got foreshadowed in Jibanyan's origin story.
Yeah, there's an episode of... In fact, to give you an idea, Dej, the Jibanyan episode, the origin story, that's a side quest in the second game. Basically. So basically, a lot of this stuff is taken from the second game specifically. The point is, yeah. So after after what happens is suddenly Nate remembers, and guess what? Whisper shows up. He's been looking for him ever since, apparently. And Jibanyan also shows up. Problem is, I guess now it's time to try to fight over this giant cat yokai. However, like I said before, the Yokai Watch is nowhere to be seen. So what can we do? Oh, well. Okay.
Hey,
So-
can I ask a really dumb question?
Go on.
Why do all the cats look the same?
Because same character designer? I don't know.
I just feel like it would have been better as like they
Think of
had
it.
stuff.
I think the thought process there is more like the type of family of a monster line. Think of it something similar to different colored chocobos in a Final Fantasy game.
I think the issue
Okay.
with that is like, well, I think it's only really the case with the cat yokai. Like, well, I guess
Oh no,
unless you
remember,
can.
Jova, you get even stuff that's different. Like, for example, the human-faced dog yokais.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
example.
Dan
They might have
Doodle.
different characteristics and slightly different, but they roughly still look the same.
They have different character designs, but in terms of like color patterns, they're generally the same.
That's also to
Just the
justify-
colors are different.
That's also sort of to justify the in-game design and the fundamentality of an RPG having, more powerful version of the same monster, just looking like it's like different. Again, Ni no Kuni already had this with the minions anyway, so.
I will say that one cat certainly does not look like the others, but I will leave that for now because that is not relevant to this movie.
Fortunately, the cat eventually. However, the cat happens to be dissolved because the two witches from the Jibanyan episode show up and they reveal their plan. They apparently erased the Yokai Watch from time by traveling through time and preventing its creation.
Which also made Nate have amnesia for about 3 minutes in the movie, I think.
If anything, there's a bit of irony that it starts with one of Nate's schoolmates mentioning stuff about yokai and him being like, "Don't be ridiculous." That
Yokai
stuff
doesn't
never
exist.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though we literally start this movie with a yokai making stuff randomly giant.
Yeah, actually, that's the gimmick of the giant cat. He activates the cheat mode of Big Head, apparently.
Not just
What
big
with that?
head, he can make a woman's shoe big, a woman's hat big, a fish
Fish
big,
Yeah.
The burger.
a
Yes.
bicycle.
Big.
No, Maya. Sorry.
Maya would totally want to hang out with this particular with Meganyan. By the way, this the giant cat is called Meganyan. By the way. Okay. So what happens? What happens is Nate decides to. Fortunately, this happens to be a vacation that his family is having.
No.
specifically to the hometown.
Actually, Nate's
Sorry.
the one who decides to do the
yeah.
vacation, essentially, because he remembers a legend that his grandmother told him
Sure.
about a giant cat that showed up in their village. He makes the connection with Megan
Oh,
Yan
sure.
there.
I was going to get to that too. It's just that I was mentioning, considering the parents give him, I'm assuming they were already maybe planning on something, or maybe he suggested to them. But
No.
we don't see
In the
specific-
movie,
They mentioned on the
literally-
train, like, oh, why did you want to see Grandma?
Oh, yeah,
It's
right.
like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah,
I
you're
felt
right.
like it.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. Sorry. The point is, one cool thing that I also like is how they even bring up the original yokai scrolls from Japan, the actual existing scrolls that yokai culture is based upon. So nice. That's pretty cool. So apparently, Meganyan is partly inspired by a particular giant cat that we see in the actual real Japanese scrolls. So pretty cool. Okay, so when Nate and Whisper and Jibanyan arrive at his grandma's town, they visit, and Grandma talks about how apparently Nate looks very much like his grandson, who also is called Nathaniel. Basically, to avoid confusions, Nate will be Nate as usual, whereas Nathaniel will be known by his full name, Nathaniel, instead of the abbreviated version, basically. So,
Which
there
is
you go.
funny because if I recall correctly from the second game, I haven't completed it necessarily, but if I recall correctly, regardless of whether you pick Nate or Katie, Nathaniel's design pretty much stays the same.
Yeah, that was something that they kept from, because remember, one of the things for the first two games that they wanted to keep Katie as the female protagonist. Fortunately, they fixed stuff like that with the third game, where they created a whole new female protagonist, and she has her own campaign separate from Nate instead of being just a palette swap.
And,
you know,
and
so-
then they apparently booted her back out in favor for Katie because apparently Japan didn't like Haley Ann, which is ironic because the Western fan base actually really did like her more. But regardless, though, my main point is, I do kind of wish in the game they could have changed this design, but I get why they didn't.
in the anime, does Katie ever get her own Yokai Watch, or does she
Yes.
play a
In an
role?
alternate universe, but I don't know if they do it in the main universe.
Yeah, basically, in the anime and movies, they go with if you pick Nate as your main character. However, as a little nod to those to the girls or boys maybe who picked Katie as their character, there's an episode where Whisper gets transported to an alternate timeline where Katie's the one who found the Yokai Watch, and she has her pennant that she uses in the game in the first 2 games. So it's an episode that's entirely dedicated to Katie players from the games, basically.
Also, since it's a moment where he starts appear, might as well mention it here because it's gonna be a constant throughout the entire movie. This movie has a slight product placement in it, believe it or not, in the form of Kumamon. Essentially, while someone who doesn't know much could believe it is just another yokai that is following Nate and Whisper and Jibanyan, no, it's actually apparently a mascot of a prefecture in Japan that they just decided to put it there.
I remember.
If you've seen the meme "Why for the Glory of
I
Satan,"
was
of
just about
course,
to say that.
you will know this guy.
I'll admit, as somebody who knew nothing about him, he seemed kind of random. Granted, what I would have done is have a certain yokai, which I won't mention yet, be the one who shows up in his place. Well, actually, I can mention him because we do see a weird dark shadow zipping in and out around the house where Nate and his family come to. More on that later.
That particular yokai, my take with it was always that he's meant to be kind of like a Big the Cap type of character, where his humor is very like random, and he just keeps showing up in places
I've already
like,
established that he
wondering.
wasn't a yokai, according to Tio.
Well, yeah, I get that, but
could
my
be,
point
could
is
be
that
not. It's just that it's an original character. That's the point.
well,
Right.
my point is that I've always interpreted it as he's meant to be a Big the Cat type character in the context of the movie itself, like much like Big's cameos in Sonic Adventure 2. Like he's meant to be like a joke character who shows up randomly, kind of like how in Sonic Frontiers, Big just happens to be in the Starfall Islands for no reason, and even Sonic points it out. They're trying to go for that energy, that kind of random joke character that just shows up and people are just, how the fuck did you get here? That's what I always took.
That being said, the yokai I'm referring to is one that seems to have a weird head structure and cloak. I wonder who that could be.
Yeah,
that's
side first. Yes.
It's
Yeah,
funny
I'm sure
because
it's
that
not important.
yokai actually leads them to where they need to go.
Okay, so Nate has a talk with his grandma. Apparently, Nate's grandfather was very stubborn, but according to her, but they were best friends. And she speaks very fondly of him, and you remind me a lot of him. Of course, typical grandma stuff. You know how it is. However, Grandma seems to be not telling us everything, because when Nate finds out something and to check and he goes, the Grandma seems to be very smiling about it and going like, it seems like Grandma knows a bit more than what she's letting on, but we'll get back to this. Okay, so they check this shed, and guess what? Meganyan is trapped in there. Meganyan, to make a long story short, Meganyan explains that because he has been accumulating power, he was able to create a double version of himself, an extra protection for himself, and that's the Meganyan we met in town at the beginning of the movie.
The one who got dissolved, which...
So the Meganyan we saw being dissolved was not actually the real Meganyan, it was just an astral projection, so it's cool, don't worry, Meganyan lives. Don't worry, Shiva, this cat will not die. I mean, this cat is already dead, so he can't die.
Yeah, they're already dead here.
Well,
so, you know.
Well, it's
Projecting.
funny. Well, it's funny because a later scene...
started it.
Well, it's funny because a later scene suggests that they can die again, but I digress. Apparently he's been keeping the power by using a cork plugged into his butt.
Yeah, I personally don't mind this this joke, but I understand that it would have been preferable to do something
That's
else here.
so weird.
It leads to the obvious fart joke as well, which I kind of groaned at.
No, I personally, as far as fart jokes go, this one wasn't particular. The two fart jokes in this movie, in my opinion, don't bother me that much because they pass by real quick before they become truly obnoxious to me. But that being said, I will definitely agree as well that it would have been preferable to do something. That being said, I'm not going to lose sleep over this.
Far be it
The
from
point
me to be a
is-
stone cold hard person who can never laugh at a fart joke. I just feel that neither of the fart jokes in this movie
No,
really
they
worked
weren't.
for me.
No, they didn't work for me either. That being said, I feel like they go by quickly enough so that I can easily just ignore them. Okay, fine. And the movie immediately, it's not like the movie like milks the joke for like a minute like Family Guy would or something. So
I think-
I'm at the very least, I'm at the very least thankful that it's just a quick joke that they'd make.
I think it's a good time for me to sum up how I feel about the humor in this movie. For the most part, it's pretty good and on point. That being said, this movie is chock full of comedy to the point where I do feel like the humor can sometimes undercut what they obviously want to be the serious moments at times. I'll explain more about that later.
Okay, the point is, after them finally rescue Meganyan, he turns back into his real form, Overnyan. For those who don't know, his Japanese name is Fuyunyan, which is the pun on the word on hovering. So obviously the translators did basically did a literal translation, Overnyan. Okay, that works.
So tell
This
me,
is a joke that he
Pedro, in the game, is Meganyan an evolution to Hovernyan?
Yes. Well, Meganyan is in the game. Like I said, this movie's basically a streamlined version of the plot of the second game. So most of the stuff you see here is, all of it, in fact, except from the product placement character. They're all in the game.
I'm mainly asking because, sometimes the game and the show are different in how certain yokai are produced. Like, Badenyan initially is caused by, the bad yokai affecting Jibanyan in the anime, but in the game you're supposed to fuse them. So I'm just wondering, since again, I have not completed the second game, I'm wondering if Meganyan is an evolution or the pre-evolutionary state of Hovernyan in the game.
No. In the game, they treat him as a different yokai in general. The basic point is, okay, so Overnyan then tells them that in order to restore the Yokai Watch, they need to travel back in time. And this is something where I wanted to talk about the specific joke that was really fun in the Japanese version. Unfortunately, for copyright reasons, we weren't able to properly translate it in the English version. And here's how it goes in the Japanese version. All right, I'm going to do this with the help of this. That time, I actually forgot what the name of the stone was. Like something about the time stone or whatever.
They call it
That
Time Stone in the dub.
That time stone. Dun, da, da, da. And in the Japanese version, Whisper says, "What's up with the Doraemon act?" Basically, it's meant to be a Doraemon reference because remember, in the Japan, Yokai Watch airs in TV Tokyo, the same network where Doraemon airs. Unfortunately, since the distributors for Doraemon in the West are different, the translators for the English dub had to change the joke because, in order to mention Doraemon, they would have to, deal with royalties and shit. So that joke was changed. So it was a necessary loss, sadly, but whatever. The basic point is, so if you're a Doraemon fan like I am, you got to kick out of that joke if you watched it in Japanese at all, at any point. I actually do indeed
For
recommend
noting
watching
that
this.
Overnyan, while doing this, does the exact same motion because he does have the equivalent of the same kind of belt that Doraemon would have. So again, it helps also on a visual level, not just in voice form.
Yeah,
Did
and
the
Overnyan
two
is a
ever
blue
cross
cat.
over by any chance?
No.
Huh. You'd think with how big Yokai Watch was.
Overnyan is a blue cat, just like Doraemon. So yeah, definitely a joke that works.
And
Anyway, they
he's
travel
voiced
back-
by Johnny Young Bosch.
Oh yeah, that's another thing that's kind of interesting for those who are not aware, and check Squirm comms, me, Teo, and Dwibs commented on Code Geass, the first season specifically. The point is, I'm not a fan. If you are, more power to you, but I'm personally not a fan. That being said, one thing that's really funny to me is how for voicing Hovernyan, Johnny Young Bosch uses his LaDouche voice, the main character from Code Geass. So that was so I got a kick out of that.
you're talking
That
about
for a lot of
Lelouch.
character types like Zero from Mega Man X.
I mean,
yeah.
heck,
There's a different range with his Zero.
it's funny because he also voices Nate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, Joe. But the voice he gives Nate is the same voice he gives to the main character of the sequel to Tales of Symphonia. So that's the thing. When watching this, movie, I get a kick out of watching John Young Bosch redo voices of characters that I'm familiar with already from him. So kind of interesting. All right, so they travel back in time, and there you go. Now we are in the exact same place, but 60 years ago. Okay, back in the days when Kamen Rider was all the rage. Yeah, one thing that
about 60 years ago.
yeah, one particular thing that's going to become prominent starting from this point, everybody, something that Deji in particular really appreciates about the movie is the fact that this movie becomes kind of an homage to Kamen Rider. So if you're a Kamen Rider fan, you're in for a treat.
Oh, Dej, you do know there's pretty much a Yokai Watch spin-off that more or less is Kamen Rider Yokai Edition.
Yeah, Yokai Academy. Anyway, the point is they return back, and yeah, the witches that erased the Yokai Watch have been wrecking havoc because they've been using nasty spirits to possess people and turn them violent.
We actually did see some foreshadowing to this when Nate and his family first came to Harrisville.
Yes, that is true. That being said, yeah, they get attacked. And even Whisper gets possessed by one of them. And then, when all seems lost, a hero shows up from the shadows and beats them with his stick. No, I'm not kidding. That's basically what happens. Or like a bat, or whatever the thing is supposed to be called.
A bat.
A bat covered with a red substance. We will know later what that is.
And lo and behold, conveniently, it happens to be Nathaniel Adams, Nate's grandfather, back when he was still as young as Nate. So there you go.
It looks just like him.
Well, no. To be fair, he does have some
they have minor features.
They do have some alterations, which is more than can be said for some or certain other grandparent characters, but we have yet to meet those guys.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, yeah, Nathaniel saves them, and he even gives Nate a pearl a marble that he uses to watch yokai. So we can already tell that Nathaniel Adams was the one who created the Yokai Watch because he already knows what material can be used to make people see yokai.
This was actually mentioned earlier because the reason the Yokai Watch apparently disappeared was because these two hags, Kin and Jin, played by Melissa Hutchinson and Jen Wong, essentially messed with time so that Nate's grandfather won't make the Yokai Watch. They actually do state right there and then before going back in time that Nate's father is the one who at the very least creates the prototype for the Yokai Watch, which blossoms into the Yokai Watch we're familiar with.
Especially because the anime had made a sort of a lore joke established before, but instead the Yokai Watch was instead mass-produced by a company with a Steve Jobs, shark yokai, because of course. So instead, in the movie, it's essentially hand-wave that while Nathaniel designed the prototype, later on he basically sold it.
Basically, he designed the first ever one, but he eventually
gave into capitalism.
Sold to Steve Jobs.
Not even the deads are safe.
She right. As we later learn, he got married and he got a family. He has to support his family somehow.
Of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, the basic point is, Nathaniel saves them and everything and helps them. So, and then after, I guess I'm saying, and Nathaniel decides to just go because Nathaniel seems like he's not particularly friendly so far, at least.
Not friendly. He's kind of outright a dick, pretty much saying, "I don't need friends." Going with that brooding.
And even rejecting Covernian, what he said. Well, what about me? Who am I to you?
Yeah, there's later going to be a reason that explains why he's like this. The point is, he starts to go back home, and our heroes start following him because, like we've established, they need him to build a Yokai Watch, so they decide to follow him.
That, and they have nowhere else to stay.
Yeah,
they didn't spend the night on a treehouse.
We're literally in a different time period. Where are we supposed to go?
But after meeting with him in his cabin, they explain the stuff. Oh, I'm your grandson and everything. We need you to build the Yokai Watch and everything. But
just casually risk breaking the timeline by telling him you're his grandson.
Yeah, this movie doesn't care about that. It's one of the first things they do. It's like, oh yeah, this is your grandson.
Well, remember, Yokai Watch is above all, but while it has heart to it, Yokai Watch is a comedy first. So Yokai Watch is always very loose with its specific, like, super time details. Like, the time travel is a plot device for the actual plot rather than being like an actual focus. The point is, Nathaniel refuses to build a Yokai Watch because, as Jova just put it, he has a Lucario moment where he claims that he doesn't need friends. However, fortunately, we start to see that there might be something else to him aside from being the apparent jerk he is at the beginning, because after that, look at that. Nate's grandma, as a little girl, visits him because apparently they're already acquainted by this point.
I'll admit, when we first saw her, I thought she was going to participate more in the plot, especially since younger grandma does show up during the credits later on, but it's like, nope, she's there for that one scene, and then we never see her again. Well, the younger version of her.
Not the younger version, anyway.
That's what the game is for. In the game, there's an entire subplot of her, and that fleshes out their relationship a bit more.
There are definitely some points in the movie where I can tell, yeah, this is definitely an adaptation off the game, because it does feel like some things are paced a bit weirdly, and I get it, they want to get to this here and there. I feel like this movie could have benefited from a 2-hour runtime, honestly.
Sure. I personally feel like, considering the incredible amount of stuff they had to streamline to compress this into a movie, I think they did a pretty good job, but sure, an extra 30 minutes wouldn't hurt either. I agree.
I'll say I agree as somebody who never played the game, at least not for very long. So I feel like the movie is fine as its own experience. So.
I will argue, however, that again, in true level 5 fashion, they do such a. Even though we only see Nate, Nathaniel, and the grandma talk for just one scene, the scene itself is expertly written, in my opinion. Like we do get a genuinely good sense of what their relationship is like. At this stage, like just from again, like it's weird. Like, and she even mentions, "Oh, everybody's acting weird," referring to the people being possessed and everything. Yes, I told you, don't. That's why I told you to stay at home. It's not safe here. So we get to see that Nathaniel is not. Apparently, he is indeed a caring person, despite everything. So there might be something more to him that we don't know yet. So again, it's a short scene, but they make every line count. We get a genuinely good sense that she likes him, and he himself is very good to her. So you can definitely see why these two become a couple years later, because they are. You can tell they have some really good chemistry, because again, the writing is very good in this scene.
I just wish we could have gotten more from her. Granted, one of my pet peeves with Yokai Watch has kind of been how involved other characters outside the main characters get to be with the action, because unfortunately, due to the main formula of the main series, most times most of the characters don't know that yokai are there, so it doesn't feel like they're getting the full participation that they could be.
I still feel like oh my god, I was about to say Nate's friends should be more involved.
Yes.
But that's just because it's like they're basically like Lance friends from Mega Man NT Warrior / Battle Network.
Except again, not as involved. But I digress.
Yeah.
So that goes on. But hey, there's one thing we missed over there. What exactly was Nathaniel putting on his bat? Spicy chili sauce.
Yes,
apparently the shadows really hate that kind of stuff.
Well, to each his own, I guess. Like, I guess not everybody can. Yes, sure.
They're getting hit in the head with it. Like, some of it's probably getting in their eyes, and it's probably terrible.
Well, there you go, then.
Are you speaking from experience, Shiroi?
No, thank fuck.
I'm pretty confident
fuck
the
not,
average human being will react violently to the experience.
Listen, when you don't have as much vision as most people do, you tend to take care of your eyes that little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Okay.
I thought you were going to say that you've time traveled before, but okay.
How do you know?
How do you know I haven't?
Yeah,
anyway, go on, Pedro.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, our long-running theory has been that Shiroi is Dweebs from the future.
See that for all you know, I'm actually talking to you from the future. Who knows?
I mean, yeah, because your time zone's ahead.
Yeah, because you're in Europe.
I mean, heck, for all you know, Didge, I'm actually your father from the past.
Anyway,
there's a lot.
Let's be thankful that these time travel story does not go the Back to the Future or Futurama route of Nate's grandma falling in love with him.
One thing that also we also see is another scene that again reveals that there's more to Nathaniel than we first met at eye, is the fact that there's plenty of yokai living around his cabin, and as Ovanyan establishes, they desperately want to be his friends if he would let them. And in fact, Nathaniel actually has a list of little I forgot the English word for this. Discs that have the names of all the yokai he's helped. Precursors to something else? Who knows?
Nah.
Yeah. I actually really like the way they actually explain like the origin of a lot of the series iconography. So that's pretty cool. Overnyan himself also kind of sounds bothered by it because, you know, like obviously he clearly considers Nathaniel a friend, but Nathaniel for some reason is shutting people out. So I guess we'll have to come back to this. All right, in the next day, and by the way, a neat little touch that this movie retains from the anime, Whisper, when he sleeps with half his body
clipping through the floor.
Clipping through the floor. This is if you've seen the anime as often as me too, and Shiro has seen, this is actually a running gag. Whisper always sleeps like that, so funny. Okay, so this is the part where the Deji in particular really enjoys. That turns out Nathaniel spends a lot of his time reading a specific comic. The Maximus Mask comic, which, as Deji very well pointed out, it's an homage to Kamen Rider. So yeah, and not to mention superheroes in general.
It seemed definitely a reference to the Batman 60s show.
Well, you have to remember, Jova, Kamen Rider being a Sentai product is definitely inspired by the 70s Spider-Man show in some kind of way.
That does not surprise me.
Exactly, that one. But to be fair, considering this story in universe takes place during the 60s, it's more likely that it was also, you know, Silver Age Batman, considering it has a lot of staples from that.
Given the voice acting we hear from Maximus Max later on, definitely sounds inspired by Adam West.
Yeah, they're clearly going for the whole campy era of that particular time, which is fun. Yeah, and one particular thing that we also see is that Maximus Mask has a dance, or rather pose specifically, that Nathaniel, as a big fanboy that he is, loves to imitate because he finds it absolutely cool. Nate, however, doesn't find it cool at all and finds it lame.
Which is funny because I could swear that pose is literally part of one of the Yokai Watch dances. Specifically,
my grandfather's a nerd.
Oh, I can actually no. If you're talking about the first dance, the first ED of the anime, it's not that specific pose. No, it's different poses. It's clear what they're going for. The usual grandkids don't really get into what their grandparents were back when they were kids. You know, the usual generation gap. You know, it's perfectly common and reasonable. That being said, the movie's going somewhere with this regarding the Maximus Max pose, as we'll see by the very end when they say goodbye. So basically, through some interesting rationalization, Overnyan manages to convince Nathaniel that Nate can be his Boulder Badge. For those who don't know who Boulder Badge is, he's Maximus Max's sidekick.
He's actually been hinting at this as early as he met him as Meganyan, but yeah, I do find it funny that of all the things to get Nathaniel off of his I don't need anyone bout here, it's essentially having his own Boulder Bash, even if it's his own grandson.
Yeah, like, well, whatever works, right? So yeah, basically, and so as a result, Nathaniel starts training Nate in the ways of a common superhero. And Nate, of course, has a lot of trouble because he's not even familiar with this at all. This thing was only popular before I was born, type of thing. So pretty fun. Minus
the fact that stuff like Sentai Kamen Rider is still ongoing. But okay, Nate.
Well, to be fair, it was an homage. It's technically a different product, that fictional thing that's doing here. So we can just assume that it eventually stopped being popular.
Nate is just uncultured.
I mean, Nate is a loser in universe.
Well, yeah, that's the whole idea. The whole conception behind Nate is he's meant to be an average boy who's not particularly talented at anything to make him more easier to relate to. You know, instead of the point is. After some squabbling here and there about the posing, eventually they take a walk to explore the rest of the town. And another thing that I would like to mention about that this movie does really well is retain the exact same music tracks from the Yokai Watch 2 soundtrack. Yes, every single track that you hear in the game when you're exploring the specific spots that are in this movie are copy pasted into the movie as well. So we get to hear the exact same tracks, which is something that I really appreciate because I'm a big fan of Kenichiro Saigo's work in both this franchise and Megaton Musashi. So pretty cool. So yeah, and yes, we, like Jova foreshadowed earlier, we even get a little joke. Oh look, we found Bear, Katie, and Eddie's grandparents, and they look exactly like them. It's clear that what they're going for, the usual joke that, oh look, they look just like their grandparents and shit, blah blah blah.
Yeah, again, I do wish they could have made some slight alterations like they at least did with Nate's grandfather, but here it's like, nope, they look exactly the same as how their grandchildren will look, and it's like, and again, the odd thing is, that's all we get. It's just the one scene with them, and then, boop, we're off. I assume in the game you got more interactions with them?
Yes.
And that's probably why they didn't change their designs too much, because they were only going to be there for that scene.
Well, in the game, Shiro, you can actually talk to them and everything. They don't have side quests.
And then for the movie specifically.
Well, I'm guessing sure for the game has a similar process. We already had the models. We don't really need it to.
That's the thing, Shiro. That's the thing, Shiro. The game came before the movie. This movie is an adaptation of the game.
Yeah, so the thing is, the movie is taking these from the game, essentially. It is...
Yes.
So they're just basically using their already established design sheets.
Yeah, with the again, similar to what Kimba did with his second season. It's a repurposed character model.
I mean, I'm already indifferent.
It's understandable to me. It's just noticeable.
As for the context of the movie itself, it's done for the sake of a little winking joke, which again, it's fine. I mean, I personally don't really mind either way. Whatever. Moving on. Skipping about some, they even explore something, and we even get, like I said, we get to hear the Harrisville in the past theme, which is one of my favorite tracks from the game. So cool. Thanks. Kenichiro Saigo, by the way, did compose a couple tracks that are new specific to the movie, by the way. Here they show up in specific scenes. So there's that too. The soundtrack is really fun. Moving on. After exploring a bit, we get a moment where they're actually watching Maximus Mask on TV. And yeah, Nate gets to see for himself how Nathaniel, and as well as many other people in this timeline, in this particular period of time, really love Maximus Mask. And yeah, like Jova said, it's clear that they're going for that 60s campy superhero vibe, and it's really fun.
Interesting
you can tell
enough,
the voice actors are having fun.
Interesting enough, this is apparently Nathaniel's first time ever seeing a TV, since whereas the other ancestors live in the past version of Springdale, this is Nathaniel's first time coming to that town. The reason they came to this town is because they're looking for an all-powerful yokai.
Before we get into the backstory of Nathaniel, let's actually bring up the villain. The two twin Rova type characters, Kin and Jin, are actually working for Dame Dead Time.
There's also a third yokai, the old guy who shows up in the third version of the game, but he never talks, weirdly enough.
I guess that's his shtick.
Well, he's the mechanic that was going to be fixing the clock later.
Remind me, does he talk in the game?
No, in the game he doesn't talk either. Okay, so the basic point is Dame Dead Time is a witch yokai who has a very ear-piercing scream. Where in the one thing that's fun, that's actually fun, kind of amusing. In the Japanese version, she screams in a very typical way, but the English decided to make a dun 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 joke about it, which sure, because it a more Western take on the joke. Sure, fine by me.
They basically had Alison Packer do an old Harley Quinn voice.
All right. Right after that, after realizing how much he loves Maximus Mask, like, okay, it's okay. So I can see now why you love to play pretend Maximus Mask, and that's when Nathaniel goes, "No, actually, I'm not pretending. I have to become Maximus Mask." And he's like, "Why?" And then, of course, we get a flashback telling the backstory of what led Nathaniel to get to this point where he's shutting people out. A long time ago, Nathaniel had a best friend that he himself really liked, and he even swore that he would protect him if something were to happen to him. Unfortunately, when his friend was being bullied by, two bullies, he chickened out and couldn't exactly do anything, just stood by in fear doing anything. He was afraid to do something, and his friend felt betrayed and cut ties with him. And that's what. And later, after being distraught by what happened, eventually he found Maximus Mask, a hero, as described in the comic, a hero that protects everyone.
And the shtick is that, if I recall correctly, the catchphrase is that if I protect the world, the entire world is my friend. Something like that.
Exactly. So basically, taking from into the whole superhero escapism thing, Nathaniel fully adores Maximus Mask because Maximus Mask is the kind of person he wants to be, someone who can be reliable and protect his friends, which he wasn't able to do when the time came for it.
And apparently
So-
this friend shouted that because he didn't keep his promise to him, he hated him and ran away with that single sexy animated tear.
This also explains why Nathaniel is shutting people out. He doesn't want any friends because he cannot bear the idea of possibly another friend of his getting in trouble, and he's afraid that the next time it happens, he might not be able. Yeah, yes, that's.
But he's perfectly fine with the girl, with Nate's grandma.
Favoritism there.
He wasn't rescuing her though. They just had like a conversation.
Oh, that's the thing, though. It's like, well, he definitely. I mean, they pretty much more or less say that they are friends at the time there, and he's all about protecting her. So it's
Listen,
like,
a cute girl was talking to him. All right, leave the man alone.
Look, he needs to go on that Sigma male grind set, okay?
There's also an impliance that the timeline is screwed up because let's just say there is actually going to be something more about the flashback that we haven't been told yet.
Yeah, okay, sure.
I keep it but to go to something you said earlier, this Nathaniel is from the boonies. I mean, a city, a country folk
village.
So he knows familiar with them fancy technologies.
It's the.
I guess it's more a traditional small village.
It's the Okinomiya to his Hinamizawa.
It's your typical Japan countryside that we see in a lot of animes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
like Pallet Town.
The basic point is, yes, they're also here because, according to Overnyan, there's one particular yokai who can potentially help them and help them, give them the wisdom they need to defeat them that time, Master Nyada. A character that is not at all subtle. As Shirei herself has pointed out various times in our SCWRM channel, when it comes to paying tribute to something he likes, Hino is never subtle.
No, not at all, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, and this character is incredibly blatantly a cat version of Yoda. At even the yokai pad says you should not judge him by his size. So, but here's the problem, though. Where could Master Nyada be? I mean, he could just be about anywhere. How exactly are we going to find him? I mean, it will probably take a long time of searching to find him. I mean, where could he go? Have you seen where Master Nyada is, Shiroi?
I don't know, but there's some weirdo waving at us.
Yes. In typical lighthearted fashion that Yokai Watch always looks to do, the plot literally falls on their lap, and Master Nyada does. Unfortunately, Master Nyada, again, paying homage to The Empire Strikes Back. At first, Master Nyada seems like he's just a bum who doesn't really live up to the hype that he does.
Crazy old coop.
Yeah, that's what they also do in Empire Strikes Back, Shiro. It's very blatant what they're doing. It's a little homage. So Master Nyada is constantly sleeping, and he doesn't. However, eventually they manage to keep him awake enough so that he will tell them that they can indeed find the strength to defeat them that time. Unfortunately, and by the way, we also get to see Master Nyada doing his shtick where he defeats a couple evil spirits. So that's pretty cool. Again, clearly paying homage to how Master Yoda was in Empire.
And then passes out immediately after.
He's old, Shiro. I mean,
it's apparently in his skill set, according to the Yokai Pata Century, where while he is the most powerful yokai that there is, after one battle he has to sleep a whole day to get his energy back.
Yes.
Yeah, unlike the other cats, he died much older, it seems.
Exactly. All right. Unfortunately, Kin and Jin show up, as well as them that time as well, and they all kidnap Jibanyan so they can to attract Nate and Nathaniel to their place so that they can take them head on. Nathaniel goes. We
Oh
also
wait,
have a
hold
really
on.
good- Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I almost forgot to mention about what Master Niata gives them, though.
Oh, that you're right. Sorry.
Oh yes.
No, Joe was right. That's was right. We have to mention it because it leads to my favorite joke in the movie. The point is, he gives them some kind of interesting object that we don't know yet what it is. But don't worry.
It looks like a scroll type thing.
Actually, I think he says what it is, but it's more like they think it has to be something inside of it. He says for them to trust the hose.
May I remind you, audience, that this movie came out the same month as Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Yes.
Trust me, Dej. This Yokai Watch loves to make pop culture references all the time. This can be just as much of a coincidence as anything.
I'm pretty much happy to say that while they may have had to have gotten rid of the Doraemon reference, the Star Wars references were kept intact.
Oh, they were. And it leads to, again, like I said, my favorite joke in the movie. The point is, Giovanni gets kidnapped, so we have to save him. This leads to a really good character moment between Nathaniel and Nate, where Nate insists that he builds the Yokai Watch, that way he can summon him easily. And he explains, look, no, by the time I do that, they'll finish up their evil plans and it will be too late. So I'm going to save them. But of course, and Nate has a moment where, this is actually the first time Nate has to solve the problem without the help of the Yokai Watch. And he is a bit hesitant at first, but he decides for the sake of his friend Jibanian to go and save him. So there you go. So Nathaniel and Nate head straight into the evil furnace or whatever it is.
A
It's an
factory.
abandoned
I remember
factory.
he said he said he's his partner.
Yeah, he's his partner.
I do
Well,
find
remember,
it.
Go on.
I do find it interesting how the abandoned factory happens to be closer to Springdale than Harrisville, which ends up working out for the heroes well. The only issue is that even if we wanted to try and make a new watch, all of Nathaniel's tools are back in Harrisville, which, we don't have time to get to.
Indeed. Okay. So we get to the abandoned factory, and the battle kind of starts. One cool thing is that, again, Nathaniel brings up his usual bat. However, there's nothing for Nate, so fortunately, Whisper brought something. 2 hammers. Too bad they're toy hammers, but hey.
I like the little arcade whack-a-mole hammers that you bring.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the Pico hammers. Why not?
They do look like that, but yes.
Yes, they do. Another thing that also shows is that Nathaniel, being a much more outdoorsy type of kid who does a lot of exercise, he clearly is a little more physically fit since he's able to even do a cool jump into a pipe, whereas Nate kind of tries to do the same but falls on his ass.
I'd say
So that's a
Nate
nice-
does that also partially due to the hesitation in trying to grab onto Whisper's ass, which does not help out. Which kind of makes it that they essentially did a role of grab ass in the factory there.
I actually do like that detail because it's a great to differentiate the two characters. Nathaniel is definitely, like I said, a much more outdoorsy type kid who's constantly doing exercise and playing and going all around exploring. Whereas Nate, as we see in the anime, is definitely a much more video game playing, manga reading type kid who he still gets out and does things outside.
He's a
don't get me
town
wrong.
kid. Like,
He's definitely a town kid. He doesn't do as much exercise as Nathaniel does, which explains why Nathaniel is more physically fit than he is.
Well, obviously he doesn't do as much exercise. I remember that stamina meter from the first game. Boy needs better endurance.
So yeah, eventually they reach Dame that time, and the battle ensues. So
Weirdly
they keep-
enough, Jibanyan is apparently at risk of dying by being dipped into molten magma.
Well, remember that he specifically mentions that. Oh wait, I'm dead, but this wouldn't kill me. But it's still really gonna.
probably gonna hurt though.
The thing
Still
is,
gonna-
right, the thing is, they treat it like this will destroy him, which would effectively kill him again, which did confuse me a bit. Like, I mean,
this is actually a bit
how
that
big
is
are the
explained
stakes
better.
actually,
Sorry.
given how our yokai are technically already dead?
Okay, that's actually something that can be a bit. In the anime, they actually do explain later. It's after this movie, but in the anime, they actually do explain. I get to one point where they actually do explain that if a yokai dies, he technically disappears, but eventually rematerializes. Basically, But
like a Luma in Super Mario Galaxy?
yeah, you can go that. That being said, as Jibanyan points out, they still feel pain, which is why Jibanyan still doesn't want to get burned.
Considering Jibanyan's truck fighting habit, he probably dies often. So it'll hurt, but he's died many times in is what I think.
For those who are not as familiar as me and Shiroi and Teo, the basic gist of it is that yokai can't die, but they can still feel pain. So they're still averse to putting themselves in danger, except like Shiroi said, Jibanyan is a bit too obsessed with punching trucks. Anyway, the battle ensues. Unfortunately, with all the evil spirits and and even the summons that they do, unfortunately, these witches are a bit too much for our heroes to handle. So what could possibly be done? Fortunately, right in the middle of this is when my favorite joke comes in. They realize, oh wait, the product placement character brings up a little Star Warsy hologram type thing with Master Yoda says, use the hose.
And the reception's really bad on it.
And the reception is really bad on that, of course. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. So Nate decides to take Master Yoda's advice. Use the hose.
Which turns out is a literal hose.
and by that, a literal hose. And guess what? Nate does what is, again, the funniest thing in this movie to me. He literally, casually goes there, he puts the hose on the faucet, and he literally pumps the water and literally throws the water at the clock that they're being used, that the witches are using to stop time. So basically they're cheating in the battle, right? He literally uses the hose to literally destroy the clock. So I guess Master Miyamoto's advice was indeed correct. We should have indeed used the hose.
It is magical, but the time thing is still mechanical to an extent. So
I love how these diabolical villains were just not ready to be splashed with water, essentially.
Yes.
Everyone just standing there like, what are you doing?
Yeah, like I said before, Yokai Watch is a comedy first, so obviously some shenanigans will, of course, be involved.
I do like that joke.
Indeed. Okay, after this, we also get the payoff to Nathaniel's character arc. Overnyan is being beaten down by a big spirit that they in that time summoned.
By farting out.
Yeah, sadly. So Overnyan is, of course, getting beaten up, and Nathaniel now is to make the exact same decision again. So this kid is now forced to relive that scene. So fortunately, at this point, remembering what happened, now he decides to, and he has to really make an effort because his legs start giving in, like the last time. However, this time he decides, no, I'm not going to let it happen again, and he bravely throws himself in to save Overnyan. Overnyan still gets hurt from the process, which of course makes him regret the fact that he should have done something before, and he shouldn't have been behaving the way he has up until this point. But Overnyan, of course, reassures him, look, yes, you are a hero, you're my hero, you just saved me, didn't you? So with Nathaniel's confidence restored, now it's time to finally get the Yokai Watch back. So while Overnyan and Whisper stay back and try to contain the fighting, Nathaniel and Nate go to the top of the factory so they can, since they don't have the Yokai Watch, they have to improvise. They scream specifically Nathaniel screams his lungs out to try to call out to all the yokai who were right there standing by, waiting to help him and be his friend as long as he would, again, call for them, like they said before. So they all come for them. And after this, and Nathaniel finally comes to full terms with his past, the Yokai Watches reappear, meaning the timeline has now finally been restored. And Nathaniel's Yokai Watch prototype shows up, which is actually called Yokai Watch 0.
I'll admit, I was a bit confused by this, because the idea was that he needs to make the Yokai Watch, but then I guess suddenly by finding his belief, suddenly it appears on his wrist, as if supposedly he's made it in the past, but he clearly hasn't in that regard. Like, okay, now Nate's...
Back to the Future logic.
Let me put it like this. Nate's... Okay, now Nate's watch appearing, that I get, because it's from the future. But Nathaniel's appearing is weird, since that implies that, oh, now time has retroactively made it that he is going to make it before this point, even though we don't necessarily get what's the divergent point that stops him from doing that supposedly fixes that.
The divergent point is that he shuts off from Hagwon.
The thing,
that's the problem with like time travel stories, but it's fine.
I feel like they could have maybe tried to explain that better, but it's not like it drags the movie down a whole grade. It is weird, though.
It's clear that the movie is just using the time travel as a vehicle for the actual story, which specifically is, again, the Yokai Watch Zero reappearing, it's supposed to signify that the timeline has been corrected and that Nathaniel is now fully recovered from his trauma. So, cool. That's clearly what the movie story is trying to really focus on, the specific character arcs rather than the timeline details, which again, whatever, is fine. I don't expect Doctor Who type of time travel from Yokai Watch anyway, so whatever. The point is, now that they have all the Yokai Watches, Nate finally summons Jibanyan so he can save him right on time. There you go, Shiroi. The Jibanyan will not die this time. So there you go.
He'll be back to doing that like the next day or something.
Unfortunately, Jibanyan did not die.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Shut up.
Remember that Jibanyan is Shiroi's favorite yokai. Be careful.
Wow, that explains so much.
Anyway, the point.
Wow, who could have figured that out? Anyway, go on, Paige.
We also get again the final payoff of Nathaniel's character arc, where his discs that have all the written names turn into actual medals. Again, you can question the logic of it, but it's clear that they meant for it. It's a visual representation of his character development, which again, fine by me. But we have a good payoff where he starts summoning all of his yokai friends, and the first two individually thank him for helping him. And
I think it's also to showcase like the past and the future coming together.
Exactly. So yeah, the main goal is now so the rest of the next 2 minutes of the climax basically can be summed up by this: send in everyone.
What do you mean, everyone?
Which one?
Everyone. So there you go. Nate and Nathaniel summon all their yokai friends to help them with the fighting. Dame Dead Time starts losing, and she gets angry and absolutely refuses to lose because she absolutely must defeat the humans at all costs. So Nate becomes curious why she's so adamant about this, and why Stephanie decides to use Tattletale, in typical anime tradition, to use her power so we can see what her motivation is. And here's the villain's backstory. When she was a human, she was unfairly imprisoned for a crime she did not commit. She was a victim of injustice and was left away to rot in a jail for something she did not commit. So all the time that was stolen for her, she now wants to steal it back from the humans. So yeah, it gives the villain a motivation, so it's nice.
I think my issue with this scene is like, well, it's kind of like, oh, there it is. And then after that, she, of course, ascends to bigger form. It's just like, well, I guess it feels kind of like the backstory was a bit rushed out, because after that, we immediately go to the final battle, which then essentially kind of has some jokes that come right after it, which kind of make the whole thing a bit off. Now, I thought eventually, what would happen was that after defeating her, we'd help calm her down, maybe try and befriend her like we usually do with yokai. No, that's like, we get her backstory, and then after that, she essentially kind of becomes a mindless monster. My main issue is that I feel like the whole backstory was just given out maybe a little too quickly, and I feel like it doesn't really get much resolution because, okay, yeah, we defeat her, and that's essentially the last we'll see of her in the film.
Well, some yokai are just evil. Like, that's the thing. That's also Jova. If I have to correct you, she actually turned into a CGI monster to make the movie more exciting.
Okay.
As the tagline says.
That is what I was hinting at. I find it weird that we have that one serious moment, then we go right to the jokes, which are literally fourth wall breaking. Don't get me wrong, the CGI joke is great. It's just, I find it weird that they kind of put that back to back with the so sad backstory.
That's fair. I can tell that in the game things are paced slower.
I definitely do get that inkling that it's paced better in the game, yeah.
I'll argue that there is enough of a a full minute or two in between the backstory and the CGI joke. I don't feel like it's literally right after it. So I feel like the time in between one moment and the other is enough so that it doesn't undermine it, in my opinion.
If I may, what I would have done was at least give some bit of a closer to her in the wake of her defeat, since, again, once she's defeated, she's pretty much gone. Like, if I recall correctly, even the game gave us something after her defeat.
Yes,
but I digress.
No, Job is actually right on that one. In the game, she actually does indeed calm down and become better. My guess is they didn't do this in this movie because, like they said, I guess they wanted a more elaborate climax.
My guess was...
I personally would have preferred if they kept it the way it was in the game too. But at the same time, I still don't necessarily dislike this approach either. I think, that being said, yes, I do prefer the way that the game handled it too.
My best guess is that they cut it out to save on time, which again goes back to how I do feel like this movie would have probably fared better with a longer runtime.
No, I can actually agree with that.
That being said, what this fight does give us is a cool new introduction to two ultra-powerful yokai.
Yes, thanks to the power of all the yokai concentrated in the Yokai Watch, we get two new specific forms that, yes, they're in the game too. Overnyan becomes Darknyan, and yes, it's great that they have Johnny Bosch do his Lelouch voice, because it fits perfectly for Darknyan. So cool. And yeah, we also meet the joke evolution of the first ever time where we see two yokai fuse in the Yokai Watch franchise. Whisper and Jibanyan fuse and become Bushinyan.
What I love about Bushinan is that he finally lets the Paws of Fury move actually be effective for once on the anime side of things, because usually Paws of Fury kind of gets played up as a joke, yeah. But not with Bushinan.
Well, it depends on which episode you're watching, to be fair. There are episodes where his Paws of Fury are indeed effective. It depends on which episode you're watching, to be fair. But the point is, this also calls back to something he said earlier. They were thinking, okay, because now she's like a combination of like a million dead times into one, so how can we defeat them? And Jibanyan even said, with my Paws of Fury, I can defeat at least 1,000 of them. Problem is, it's 1,000,000. Fortunately, Bushinyan's powered up version of that attack is much better, because as we see, Darknyan picks up Bushinyan and throws him straight at Dame that time, and he brings in. Okay, this is actually one of those things where I actually say that's better in the Japanese version. They changed the name of the attack to something, I forgot what the name was, but in the Japanese version, it's called 1,000,000 Paws of Fury, which again, it's an upgraded version of Jibanyan's attack. And here they changed it to something
for 1,000,000.
different. Yeah, which makes me a bit confused why the English localization team changed that. I feel like 1,000,000 Paws of Fury works just fine as it is, but whatever. Again, it tells you exactly what it is. It's a more powerful version of Jibanyan's trademark attack. So I don't understand why the English localization team felt the need to change that. But
they probably thought it sounded cooler, I guess.
I'm guessing, okay, if I'm going to give them some slack, I guess it's because saying it in English compared to saying it in Japanese has different timing, and as a result, they couldn't quite sync up the actor singing in English to the timing of the Japanese line. Maybe it's possible. Because remember, the reason they called him, the protagonist, Nate Adams, there's actually an interview about the English localization director about this back when Yokai Watch first premiered in America. That the reason they called him Nate Adams is because the mouth movements of saying Nate Adams match up with saying Amano Keita, which
It's
is
the same reason why
Nate's Japanese
Pokemon
name.
call the stick with why they gave Ash a laugh.
Yeah.
Because it moves faster than the lips.
Yeah. So if that was the reason, then fair. Sometimes you just have to do that for the sake of timing with the dubs. So whatever. It's a sad loss for me. But if that is indeed the reason, then I understand. Sometimes you just have to sacrifice things here and there for the sake of the dub. So that's fine. And yeah, Bushinyan defeats Dame that time, and the world is saved. The timeline is restored, and we go back home.
And the singularity is cleared.
The singularity is cleared indeed. Nathaniel gives Nate the Yokai Watch, his own Yokai Watch 0, because he's going to make his own one. So yeah, he is indeed still going to build it, so he's basically going to start from 0 and making friends all over again. And this also explains why in the anime, in episode 49, Nate suddenly now has the Yokai Watch 0. So again, everything is falling into place for the anime, basically. And we also get the payoff of the Maximus mask pose. Now that they've fully reconnected and fully understand each other, and become, well, friends, because at its core, this movie is about friendship. Now they can do together the pose just perfectly, again symbolizing their now mutual understanding of each other. So again, the Maximus mask pose was done for some kind of narrative purpose, so that's cool. Then they go back, and yeah, guess what? Remember what I said before early in the synopsis, that Grandma looked like she was, not telling us everything? Yeah, when Nate comes back and is about to now leave after saying his good farewells to his grandma reveals that, oh, look at that, she happens to have one of the marbles that Nathaniel used, and so she could always see Jibanyan and Whisper all along. So there you go.
She also does say that the grandpa apparently at times had said he was making a watch for his grandson.
Yeah, so that's a nice touch as well. And after that, she even gives him Overnyan's medal, which explains why in the anime Nate has the Overnyan medal.
So some timeline stuff was altered just a little bit.
Yeah.
Unless you're right, this is how it was always meant to go.
We live Arisville back to Springdale. And in the very last scene we see, turns out Nathaniel became a yokai, and he's using the Maximus pose to say goodbye to his grandson. So that's a nice touch there as well, and the movie ends.
We do see in the credits that it turns out he does still hang out with his wife here and there.
Yeah, and we also get a nice touch that after what happened, he eventually managed to reconnect with his friend that he couldn't protect that day. So yeah, that friendship was also... so it seems like Nathaniel finally got the courage to talk to his friend and apologize, and hopefully we again reconnect. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, that's the Yokai Watch movie. All right, Edge. So what we're going to the usual categories.
Yeah.
All right. So the Steve Jobs category, best character. I guess Shiroi.
Oh, okay.
Man, I wonder what she's going to pick.
Listen, I'm going to not be very predictable. I do enjoy the cats, but we're talking about the best character in a movie here. It's Koma-san, who's there for 2 seconds. No.
It's okay, to be honest.
No, it's kind of a toss-up between Nate and Nathaniel. So I'm just trying to think which of the two to go with.
Well, okay. Can you at the very least explain why those two specifically?
Like, just seeing like how they work with each other throughout the movie, like their particular bond.
You like that dynamic, yeah?
Yeah.
That makes sense. That they're
very similar people because they are like grandfather and grandson. So, I'll go with Nathaniel then, because this is his movie and he goes through the most development for it, and he's a fun character in general. Yeah, there we go.
I know who's
All
my
right.
favorite.
Well, go ahead then, Jova.
Oh, that's easy. Dame Dead Time. Like, I have mentioned issues with how they handled her in the movie. That doesn't stop her from being an insanely fun villain, which, I mean, villain role, you gotta try and make those nice and appealing. I do like the voice Alison Packard made for her. Her voice is different in the Japanese version. Like, it kind of sounds like they're making her sound like an old man in that one. Here, like
It's
I
actually
said,
a man. It's actually a man playing her in
They
the
try
Japanese version.
they try to make a homage to Tim Curry with the voice type and facial animations.
Yeah.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show.
oh, so that's what she was supposed to be an homage to.
You
That's
have to understand, Jova, that the Rocky Horror Picture Show is very popular in Japan. Even the character of Empori Ivanko of One Piece is based on that.
It would
Yeah.
not surprise me, but yeah, no, like Dame Dead Time is a pretty fun villain. I mean, again, better handled in the game, but she still is an entertaining bout here. What really helps is Alison Packard's voice work for her, including the dun 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 thing. At first I thought I'd be annoyed by it, but nah, it's actually pretty quirky and enjoyable.
You can tell the actors are having fun voicing the characters, and that fun carries over into to the audience.
She's actually one of my favorite yokai from the whole series, honestly.
Oh no, then that time I definitely recommend playing the second game then, since the second game is where she shines the best then.
Yeah, I just need to find time to finish up Boney's Spirits, and again, I know there's apparently a third version, but I can't recall its name or how to unlock it.
Okay, so that's Jova's pick. Theo, who's your favorite character?
Hovernian, simply put, he gets the shit done. He's the one who even instigates all the events to get fixed. The movie never really explains how he's conscious about the events being, erased or anything. But again, as mentioned, it's more of a tongue-in-cheek kind of story that doesn't care particularly about having to explain everything.
I think the
But
explanation for that is that he has all the power corked up inside of him, which has been allowing him to do his stuff.
Well, not necessarily do, but retaining memories of that. Remember, Nate had to be electrocuted for that.
And remember,
but,
that comes from his power that he's been storing up. So my guess is that the power buildup is how he resisted the changes to time. And or
Actually, Theo, sorry.
also, I guess we could also consider that this Hovernian is a product of a change in time, in which case he would remember about all the yokai stuff. Granted, he didn't know about Nate in that regard, so remember, he had kind of done the whole time capsule job where he stores himself here for 60 years or so while searching for the proper Bold Bash. And when he eventually finds Nate, Bold Basher. And when he eventually finds Nate, goes back in time then. Kind of like with Sonic 06 and how Omega puts himself in stasis mode until the time where he needs to reawaken with the Chaos Emerald for Shadow.
Not to mention, Theo, the other yokai that Nathaniel helped still remember him, so you can assume that's the same thing for Overnian. Like, what changes is that Nathaniel is no longer being friendly with them, but he still remembers Nathaniel, so you can still...
No, what I'm talking about is the idea of the fact that the witches actually genuinely erased the timeline and changes happened in some kind of fashion.
Oh, that.
In that
Well,
case,
yeah.
wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
Yeah, wibbly wobbly timey wimey. Anything else,
But
Theo?
the point is that, again, he gets shit done. He's basically the MVP of the entire story.
Do you like John Young Bosch's portrayal?
It's fine. I still say that it's not just confined to Lelouch, he has done that kind of voice for different characters, but that's it.
Oh, sure. I'm sure he has. Okay, I guess Dedge.
Well, let's see, favorite character. Unfortunately, Shiroi stole my answer.
What, Nathaniel?
Well, then you can pick Jibanyan.
You know what? Maybe I will, just to spite you now. I'll go with not Yoda.
Not Yoda.
Master Nyada.
That was it.
There you go.
Yeah.
As for me, I think I'll go with You know what? Actually, no. I know exactly. I'm going with Maxima's Mask, because Maxima's Mask is fun. He's a fictional character within this fictional story, but still a character. He's just doubly fictional. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And like Veggie has said, the Kamen Rider energy as well as the Batman 60s energy, it's a lot of fun. So kudos to that. That's it. Next up is least favorite character, I guess, right?
I'll go first.
Go on.
Silent old guy. He pretty much says nothing, doesn't do much except for the last bit where he tries, but ends up getting bashed from fixing the clock.
Sure. I understand. Anything else? Or
like, again, I feel like everything he does, Jin and Kin could have done just as well. I guess he's there to fix it when they're busy battling. It's like, it's weird that they didn't even give him a voice. I could have sworn that I recalled him having more of a role from the first time I saw this movie, or even experienced one of the games, but nope.
I guess not. Sorry.
Alas.
Okay, Shirai, least favorite character.
I know this is probably kind of a cheating pick, but they also like come as a pair, so the two old bats working for the villain. I know there's three technically.
Well, you don't like The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time?
So
I don't play that. I don't play that series outside of a couple of games, actually. But anyway, yes, the two old bats, because I have a long gripe with them. Anyway,
so Kin and Jin.
I'm curious as to why.
Well, yeah, not for nothing sure, but can't you explain?
Watch the show.
Oh, right.
Watch the show.
Remember that she's referencing the Jibanyan origin story episode. Well, they're the bad guys. They're supposed to do bad things.
Episode 25 specifically.
Yeah, episode 25. That's Shirai's personal favorite. The point is, okay, I guess least favorite character of Teos.
I really find hard to find one because really, I don't really think anyone in particular in the movie can be considered really bad to me, my eyes. I guess in terms of, I really need to think about this, especially because when you really get down to it, there's not even too much of a range pool of characters that you can choose from and anything. But
least favorite doesn't mean bad, so
sure. Okay. This is kind of a nitpick, well, very nitpick, and it's very exclusive just for the dub. But I really don't like how Nate's grandma is voiced in the English dub.
Which one, older or younger?
The older. Again, you can definitely tell that it's just a normal voice actress, but he's trying really, really hard to do an old person's voice impression, and it's just not working to me. But again, like he said, it's beyond nitpicky. It's a nothing reason, but I really can't find anything else.
Sure, that's fair. Edge.
Jibanyan!
Now I know who actually piloted the truck.
All right.
Yes, the plot twist is Deji was piloting the truck that killed Jibanyan. There you go.
Turn on your location, Deji. I just want to talk.
Jova,
Okay,
Jova, like you yourself said, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
What? So you imply Dej traveled back in time just to kill Jibanyan with that truck?
Yes. And now Hino is traumatized because of Deji, and now the rest of us have to suffer. Thanks a lot, Deji.
hey, but you wouldn't grow attached to the Yokai Watch series, so...
I guess.
Okay, so that's Deji's least favorite character, I guess, just so he can annoy Shirai, I guess.
Yep. That'll teach your Pokemon 2000. What?
Dej?
Well, okay, so Dej, what is your reasoning for Jibanyan being your least favorite character in this movie?
I just feel like he's annoying. He's the typical mascot Scrimblow character that you think. I know he has a tragic backstory, but the second movie is when I start to come around to him.
Yeah,
now,
okay, that's fair.
I'm
you
more
can have
surprised that your reason is not the fact that he doesn't do much in the movie when you get down to it.
Yeah. I honestly
Depends
thought
how
that
to
was
be
going to be
really
your
big
reason.
He's
kidnapped.
basically the damsel in distress
And
of the
bullying
movie.
Whisper along with everyone else.
That is
He's
my
also
issue.
lazy.
Like, that's honestly my issue with
Brat.
Jibanyan sometimes. Like, one day he's capable, other times ineffective.
Wow, it's actually a cat.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like he's a cat or something.
The thing that's
see,
off
this is
about
why I
this
don't
is
own
that the
cats.
other cats actually act more dutiful than him.
Yeah, but like Deji said, yes, Deji actually, the second movie is a genuinely really good improvement over this one. Whereas this movie is more akin to the Pokemon movie formula, the second movie takes a much more different approach to how it tells its story. And it's actually really good. I definitely recommend that movie for those who haven't seen it. That being said, yes, I guess Deji will just keep being Deji. I guess. As for me, least favorite character. Actually, you know what? I'll go with Jova's suggestion. One of Jova's suggestions. Well, not suggestions, but like Jova made me think of something that I could pick.
My thought
The
pattern,
trio,
essentially.
the trio of grandparents, I guess, because, and again, like I said before, I personally don't mind the fact that the grandparents look like the same. It's done for the sake of a joke and whatever. It's not like they're there for like 2 seconds and then they just go. The movie just moves on, so whatever, it doesn't harm anything. But again, like Teo said earlier, I don't really have anything that I can clearly point out as my least favorite character, so I have to pick something. So I'll go with this, I guess. But really,
I wasn't going to choose Jabanya. I was actually going to choose them, but because y'all. But
This was the real April Fool's joke.
Yep.
okay, but yeah, like I said, I'll go with that, but literally just because I can think of anything better for my pick. I literally am at a loss for what else to pick because, like I said, I don't really have a particular. All the possible picks that I could have picked have already been picked, so I'll just go with this because it's the only one I can think of at this point. Next up is best scene, right, Dutch?
Yes, I'll go first.
Go on.
When they activated Zaweldo.
Zavarudo.
Yeah. When I first saw that with Pedro, it's like, wait, are they going with a JoJo reference? I'm like, okay, yeah.
They even use the same negative effect.
Yeah.
The anime is full of JoJo references, Dej. Full of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a JoJo reference. Okay, now with that meme done, go on.
They're even a different, despite the fact that even a different animated companies because JoJo is animated by David Productions.
As for me, my best scene is when Nate uses the hose, as Master Nyada very well put, because that scene is absolutely hilarious. I love that joke so much. It's just like it's just so fun because it literally again it's very well that the best joke in the movie and it's perfectly handled in my opinion.
It really feels like a joke of what Mel Brooks would have done for Space.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It really feels like a Mel Brooks joke. So fun. That you already went through. Shiroi, your best scene, please.
I'm not sure what to pick.
I'm guessing. Okay, since you said your favorite characters are Nathaniel and Nate, maybe a scene between them, like when they finally do the pose perfectly together, maybe.
I feel like it's a lot of the third act when you see like the different ways each of them handle things together. So, because they both grew up quite differently. Yeah, it's just nice to see their different approaches coming together, and there you go.
Well, there you go then, Teo.
Okay, believe it or not, I originally wanted to pick the whole scene for basically the same reason, but
Same.
Go first, Jove. I'll think something in the meantime.
Mine would be the final battle scene with Dark Neon and Buchinyan. From start to finish, because, like, it is nice to see Jabonyan get to be useful, and heck, even better, we see Whisper get to be useful. By a technicality, but nonetheless, it is an awesome seeing how those two, the two mascots of a series, get the final blow on the bad guy.
I also like how they do a DBZ thing where Bushinyan
They're both
is
of their
voiced by both.
voices, yeah.
JW Terry and
Awesome Packard.
Awesome Packard.
All right.
All
Did you
right,
think of
back to you,
anything, Teo?
Tio.
Yeah, again, it's very, very minor thing, but I guess that has to be counting for something. Robonyan destroying definitely the clock. Again, it's technically encompassing part, but it's such a minor event technically, but it's, it's probably the most amusing bit out of it, and it's enjoyable, and if you have experience with Robonyan in the anime, the fact that, he himself manages to have comedy timing and awesomeness at the same time. So I guess it really is fitting to that front. That still leaves the Funko and Scourge, Pedro.
Yeah, never mind. Well, actually, no, we didn't do the worst scene.
We haven't done worst scene. Go ahead.
Okay,
All right,
then.
Go ahead, Jova.
Worst scene.
I'm guessing
Again,
the villain's backstory, maybe?
it's not just the villain's backstory, but yeah, it is pretty much okay. I feel like it's the bit with that because, like I said, it feels a bit like it doesn't mesh as well with the movie as a whole, given how the pace of stuff goes. Again, better handled in the game, but movie-wise, it's like we get her backstory, sad, then we're pretty much back to her turning into a giant kaiju, and she kind of does that thing that I don't care for, where these eloquent villains suddenly just become mindless monsters who we never hear from again, not even a final defeating cry or whatnot afterwards, which is a shame, because... And weirdly enough, they even do include her Dame Demona design, which is the actual final boss from the game, but here, this new final form is essentially millions of those beings all composed together. And again, we do have a lot of jokey jokes afterwards as well. I feel like it doesn't fit as well in that regard, which is like, again, my biggest thing with this movie is that there's a ton of humor, and it's good humor, but there are times where I legit do feel like the humor does undercut what they want to be taken as the serious moments here and there. Not enough for me to dislike the movie, no, I still do enjoy it. It's just that it's good. Very good. Just not great. But yeah, that's my least favorite scene.
No, well, that's one of the big things. The second and the movies that follow this benefit a lot better from being original stories of their own rather than trying to adapt a game story. As a result, they're able to fully focus on their own specific movie runtime. So, which is why the following movies are better.
Not to mention the fact that this backstory literally comes right off of the villain farting, which gave me Doolittle flashbacks. Go on, Dej.
Okay, let's see. Should I aim for the low-hanging fruit and say anything involving Jibanyan?
Surprise me.
Okay, it's petty, but the scene when they introduce all the ancestors is like, hey, look, it's my friend's ancestor, and then my other friend's ancestor, my other friend's ancestor. It's like, okay, they look exactly the same, 1-to-1. Is this supposed to be a joke, or?
I mean,
It is actually.
Yeah.
It was. I wasn't laughing.
Well, yeah, no, the joke is not particularly great. It's one of those jokes that's more like a kind of joke rather than a laugh out loud joke, clearly. But again, whatever. I didn't particularly find it particularly funny either. But at the same time, I don't think it harms anything.
My thing is just, I find it a bit underwhelming. Granted, I guess it would hurt less in the movie since they're there just for that one scene, even though I still have to raise my eyebrows at it, but I digress.
You done, Dej?
Mm-hmm.
Chiroi, what's your worst scene?
When Jibanyan got kidnapped.
Shut up. This is kind of it. I don't have a least favorite scene in particular, so I'm just going to go through an obvious one for me. Any of the fart jokes just existing, because I already do not like toilet humor.
Sure.
With incredibly rare exceptions, these are not those exceptions. So it's like, I just do not like them.
Okay. Teo?
Okay, I was gonna pick the third jokes as well because for the same reason, but just to mention again, I mentioned this only because I have to pick something else. Technically, the scene where Nathaniel chews out on Nate because Nate just wants to make sure to hurry up and get back the Yokai Watch so he can summon Givanian. I get what the scene is trying to convey, the idea that again, they really don't have time for this, and they have to fight with what they can instead with the resources. But Nate, it feels at some point like Nate gets unnecessarily scolded for no real reason, when in reality he just wanted to find a proper way to save his friend in a more efficient way possible.
Well, yeah, the movie does portray his reaction as a bad thing, even. So that's
Yeah,
kind of the point.
Well, okay, which sorry.
Nathaniel screaming at Nate like, "No, I don't. No, I'm not
Well,
making that like."
maybe so, but then subsequently it does prove to be the correct one, making sure that he kind of had a point. And like, I guess, but again, Nate technically did nothing wrong to deserve that kind of beat.
Oh yeah, true.
But whatever. Like I said, it's just because I had to pick something else. Anyway.
All right. As for me, if I have to pick something, okay, fine. I'll go this. Like the final battle. Why? Because Koma-san doesn't have much to do in it, and he's my favorite yokai. But that's literally like the best I can think of right now. So we'll go with that again, just because I can't think of anything else specific.
All right, then. So I think that's all of us.
So final thoughts, Dej.
Yokai Watch, the movie, is a really fascinating film that I would recommend to anyone who isn't familiar with the series. And the biggest sin that Pedro didn't tell me is that it was basically just a Kamen Rider story in disguise.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wasn't aware that you were a Kamen Rider fan at the time, so
I like Sentai.
Sure.
So I will give it's nothing groundbreaking or remarkable. I feel like the second movie is better, and I think Level 5 has also done better. But for what it is, it's fine, inoffensive, and you'll like the genuine bond between Nate and his grandfather. So I'll just give this a 7 out of 10.
Cool.
Okay. Jova.
I view Yokai Watch like I do movies like Lady and the Tramp or Encanto. It is good. One could say even very good. But it's not great, outstanding, or amazing. That being said, what it does well, it excels at. It does have a few things holding it back here. Like, I do feel there is a bit of an overabundance of humor here. Like, I feel like the humor does not always mess the best with the pacing. I've gone on to how I feel like sometimes the humor undercuts what they want to be the serious moments. And I really do feel like certain things from the game were cut down actually sometimes way too much from the plot to which it feels like they're kind of just touch and go or completely absent in the movie. That being said, the villain is thankfully a treat and delight, when she's not a mindless monster, and the action is definitely some of the best you'll see from this franchise. Well, the main franchise, seeing as how the Sentai parody fully delves into action, to say the least. The character designs, as usual, are on point. That's good. And again, these are from the game, but, by extension, the franchise. I do feel like there were some bits that you might get a bit lost on if you're not as familiar with the series or was well with Japanese lore, which I feel like the series, for the most part, does a better job elaborating this stuff for fans overseas. I can definitely tell that this was their first Yokai Watch movie in that regard. It definitely did have a lot going for it, though, which probably helped it out in the long run. And
that will be improved because the following movies definitely improve a lot by like I said, first off, they're not trying to squeeze an entire game into a movie, so that alone will, of course, make it easier for them.
Again,
So-
there are a lot of things I think that they could have done better. But again, at the end of the day, this is a good experience. It's definitely good enough to be a preliminary step to the franchise, get some people enticed. It does its job well. So I am going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay, Shirai.
This was a fun movie, and as I said much earlier on, I don't think I'm really missing anything by not have played the games. I'm sure like you can appreciate a lot more of the development if you go and play the game. But again, I still think this movie is very enjoyable. I do enjoy the arc between Nate and Nathaniel, especially since they just kind of ignore the whole, time travel. It's fine. We don't need to like hide anything. We can just go for it. It's fine.
Well, remember, Shirai, in the Doraemon joke, what they do, the Doraemon joke is, the time stone. What's with the Doraemon at? And Nate's like, because it's time travel. So the movie's very cheeky about the whole time travel thing. So
Yeah,
again,
but they couldn't use that, but it's okay. Really, the only thing I didn't like was the the fart jokes. As I said, I didn't even mind the villain's backstory because again, like since I've watched quite a lot of the show, some yokai are just very evil, and yeah, you were wrongfully imprisoned, sure, but like you've also been terrorizing a lot of people for a very long time now, so
Yeah.
can't really easily forgive you. Like, maybe a redemption is possible. I don't know, but yeah, that was. I didn't even mind the way they did it in the movie so much. If there was one other thing I didn't like, it was because Tio said he had a problem with how Nate's grandma is voiced, like the older version of her. I actually didn't like how her younger self was voiced because it was very obviously an adult trying very hard to sound like a little girl.
Is it the same voice actress? Because in that case,
Yes.
that would mean
I
she
think
has
it
fucked
is,
up
yeah.
both,
Yeah, it's
both
the same-
hands of the
yeah,
stick.
might as well give you a little bit.
Oh,
of
so it's like in the Captain America 90s film where the love interest plays both her older self and her younger self.
I didn't hate it. It was just pretty noticeable.
It's interesting. Might as well mention this, Shira, because we haven't
Mhm.
mentioned this. A little bit of trivia for those who are not familiar with the Japanese version. In the original Japanese version, the child version of the grandma is performed by a celebrity guest, specifically a member of AKB48. For those who don't know, Jibanyan is a big fan of NYAKB48. In fact, later they actually do have the girls themselves actually play the members of NYAKB48. So there you go. The girl.
Which member played the little girl?
I forgot which one. Keep going. I'll
All right,
look
cool.
it up.
But yeah, again, I didn't hate it. It was just pretty noticeable. But yeah, it was. It did a good job of introducing the world. I'm not sure what else to say. It was just very enjoyable.
I think she liked this movie.
Yeah, what gave you that idea? I think I'd also give it a 7 as well. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like, the only reason I don't give it, I would have given it an 8, except I noticed something, and I'm not sure if it's like, because I first watched this movie in Japanese, and that was a long time ago. So I'm not sure if something was a little bit different, but some of the humor, particularly in the start of the movie, I feel like, and it's probably deliberate because this is a children's series, I feel like I'm a little bit too old. So,
Actually, this was something I did want to get into, now that you mention it.
All right.
The dub feels extremely off compared to the original Japanese version.
In what way?
Doesn't hit as strong.
It's because he means that the actors don't have the same energy as the Japanese actors.
That is fair.
Which I also-
That is fair because they are going for different energy. I wouldn't even call that they have bad energy, but they're definitely going for a different energy than the original bout here and there. Granted, Even in the original, I did feel like the humor overstayed its welcome, but I definitely do agree that some jokes hit differently in each dub. I feel like the English dub does some jokes better, the original Japanese dub does other things better.
I enjoyed the majority of the humor and the story overall and its themes, but there were some jokes here and there. And again, particularly at the beginning bout where they're referring to the audience and is like, okay, I feel a little bit too old right now. So that's just more personal gripe than
In the meantime, Shiro, to answer your question, Yukipe is voiced by Haruka Shimazaki.
okay.
Yeah, which of them is?
I'm not quite familiar with that particular name. This is a huge group, but some of them have voice acted before, so I was trying to figure out if I knew the name. So
well, there you go then. I get that. Are you done?
Yeah, 7 out of 10. Cute movie.
Theo.
No, this was solid enough. I don't think he's very anything technically majorly wrong with it. It has a couple of lows like the fart jokes, like we mentioned, but overall, there's a story, especially about time travel, which would be so easy to fuck up. He knows exactly what to do. A couple of moments could have been handled potentially a bit better, and even if I haven't played the game, I get the feeling some stuff that was in the game did not pass through because of constraining, and maybe the movie needed a bit more time. But it's fine. Nothing too egregious, nothing too particularly bad. But I do think it gets a bit more merit than what the others have said. So 7.5 to me.
Okay then. As for me, I really like the movie as well. While it's not as good as the movies that follow, because the following movies don't have any fart jokes. In fact, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to think, because it's a lot of episodes. Keep that in mind. So, if I remember correctly, this movie was actually the last time Yokai Watch did any kind of fart jokes, because I want to at the very least assure people that
Cheek never shows up again.
Fart jokes are not really a common thing in Yokai Watch when we get to a certain point by 2015. But at the time we get to 2015,
raise a good point.
I'm sorry, what?
Cheek Squeak never shows up again.
Well, okay, fine. If you want to count that,
it is a yokai.
Job.
Yeah, like that's a yokai completely centered around farting.
True. Not that I remember to. I mean, who knows? Maybe keep in mind, Teo, the series has not yet been fully translated, so maybe.
Sure. And also, don't worry, the show finds plenty of ways to potentially gross out the audience, like with Unchikuma.
But trust me, in a better way. Like, let's just say there's a lot of jokes there's one particular body horror joke that left Teo completely horrified when I first showed it to him.
Is it Jerry?
No, I'm talking about Hung Gramps and what he does to those two yokai. You know the ones.
Okay, I don't think you remember correctly. I think Jerry basically one-upped.
Oh yeah, Jerry. Well, Jerry. Yeah, Jerry also one-upped. Yeah. She in particular was also very horrified by Jerry.
Yeah,
but
I get the feeling you haven't even met the episode with him, Jova, because Jerry is kind of a.
Is Jerry the American?
Yes.
Wait.
Oh my god, that is one of the most horrifying scenes I've ever seen in animation.
Yes.
Don't continue, Pedro.
The point is, yes, the jokes are funny. The story is heartfelt. I really like the characters. They're as fun as usual. The animation is great. Again, OLM is my favorite TV animation studio in Japan, and just like they always do, they make this look really good and appealing to the eye. I love Kenichiro Saigo's music. Yeah, it's just a very enjoyable movie, and it's a good first effort for the Yokai Watch movie series. That being said, like I've said before, it gets better. The second movie is way better than this because it doesn't try to squeeze an entire game into a movie, and it has a more ambitious story thematically speaking. So yeah, for me, I guess I'll go with Taylor's grade as well. 7.5 out of 10. Why not?
So that's the main four, or between us, that's a 28.5, but plus Tio, that is.
We usually don't add Tios.
Don't worry, Jova. I'll find a way.
Said Drake and Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so that's a 28.5 out of 40. Where does that rank us?
Let's see.
Yeah, I'm doing this on my phone, so maybe Joe, I know that you're
Just
also.
to understand, audience, that things have gone a bit off schedule, so there is some stuff we're supposed to not even take into account for the time being that we already covered.
That actually puts us on at the time of this recording. That actually got one upload. It's in second place, only behind Spell of the Unknown.
Ooh.
So oh right, yeah.
No, there you go then. I guess we're done.
Do we have a closing narration there, Joe?
Now that friendship has saved the day, I don't know how Yokai Watch ends their thing. Our heroes go back to the Pokemon world for another April Fool's joke. But we're not doing the traditional anime. We're doing, oh god, we're doing the Pokemon Broadway show?
Huh?
Huh?
There's a what?
Yeah, that's right.
Ooh.
See, it's time for Pokemon Live.
This sounds like fun.
Realize here's the reason why they never made another one of those.
Oh boy. Bye for now.